Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me on Facebook in the Sorcerer's Guild. Today on Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 2 and Wizard Wars, we are first going to be talking about a material link, and then I will give you an example of how a material link was created in the Wizard War between my great-grandfather, Lemmy Stevens, and the governor at the time of Michigan, George Romney, an avid Mormon. Okay, so first we will get to the material links. Now, in the last video on War Water, we did cover this some and why material links are important when it comes to magic coming from the material plane. And again, that's because you have that more direct link, it's faster, and, well, quantum entanglement or not, like I said in the last video, I don't really know quantum physics. I feel like that's mostly just an interesting thing showing that, well, science is starting to catch on to how things actually work. So, whether their quantum entanglement entirely explains like attracts like in sympathetic magic and all that or not, honestly, it's not that important because it's just showing whether that they are catching on. Anyways, I just wanted to cover that because there was some discussion on that in the last episode. Now on with today's episode. So, material links, your most obvious material links are the ones we talked about in the last video. You've got your hair, fingernail clippings, blood, saliva, any kind of bodily fluid you can get from a person gives you that DNA link. And there's very interesting ways to going about getting this link, and we'll talk a little bit about the different strategies. So one of these lesser known strategies is a cigarette butt or a glass. If you can get a hold of a bottle the person has been drinking, what's going to have their saliva on the edge, cigarette butt, a little bit there. Again, these types of effects are going to have a more direct link on the part of the body that they are connected to. So, if you get a bottle or something, or a cigarette butt or something like that someone has been drinking out of, you're going to want to use that link to affect their speech or their mouth in some way. You don't want to get a link to someone's saliva through their lips and then try to use that to affect the way they walk or their feet or travel. That's not going to work very well. So you want to stick with what you can get. You can also get someone's sock if you were trying to get affected so that they are traveling. Because these material links, yes, those physical ones are the best, but it goes farther. People have a very material connection with clothing. Like I say in the essay, someone's favorite shirt is a great link, but even better is the comfy shirt that they wear all of the time. That one is actually a better link. They are more vulnerable in that position. They have worn the shirt much more often, so it has much more of that DNA and sweat that's gone into there. But again, also, they're much more vulnerable in the position of that link because they are relaxing, they are comfortable, they are more easily affected. Now, on the same vein, we are next going to talk about photos. Now, photos are a very useful tool. And this is often something I will do with clients, is using the photos to affect them. So this isn't always just curse work and targets that you're after to do negative things towards. Pictures are great for any type of work where you're trying to help someone, and when you have a client or someone who is a willing participant, the best picture you can get is one that they gave you for the purpose of you casting on it. Because you have that link, you also have the permission, and you have the idea from them thinking that this picture has been given for that reason. Now, if you are gathering a picture, there are important things to consider about what type of picture you take. If you are looking to create a certain emotion, ideally you want to find a picture where they are already experiencing that emotion. So if you wanted to cause fear in someone and you could get a picture of them when they were at a haunted house, there you go. Perfect. Pictures where the person has intentionally blocked themselves are often very problematic and will break the link. Sometimes you see them pictures of people on Facebook that have shades, glasses on, that sort of thing. A lot of times they are purposely blocking. Like there was Charles Cosimino, one of the more famous radionics, when you see him on Facebook, a lot of times he has this big gas mask thing on his Facebook profile, and that's because he's blocking. So that picture's not going to do you any good. In fact, it's probably booby-trapped. So if you're working with other people through the internet trying to gather pictures, do be careful. Be wary that these things can have back traces on them and that sort of thing. And of course, the .com sigil, which I have talked about in other episodes, is going to prevent that. So, if you think the other person might have a .com sigil, don't get their picture off the internet. Get it somewhere else. And again, a picture given to you is 1,000 times more useful than one that you took. But, when you're looking for a taken picture, the emotion and things that they are going through in that time determine which type of picture you want to take. And one where they feel guarded is much harder to affect than one where they are in a vulnerable, relaxed position. Okay, so let's see. What else do we need to cover on material links? We got the photos, we got some other methods of how to, we discussed some other tactics. Oh, here's one. Actually, we'll talk a little bit about one of my own little Wizard Wars, since it's a Wizard Wars episode. This one, it could technically work, but it's very dangerous, and the person that tried it on me, it didn't work out so well. One other way to do this is simply to give someone something, say that it is theirs, and then get it back. This, of course, can be very risky. In the situation where someone tried this with me, we were in the middle of an argument, and they said, "Here, would you like this empty bottle?" And, well, no one's going to give you a bottle in the middle of an argument. I'm no fool. I knew exactly what they were doing. I took the bottle, and I thought to myself, this is their bottle. Anything they do to it inside this bottle will affect them. And then we left it sitting there, and of course, he then, after we're arguing, casually took the bottle back, attempting to then take my bottle so he could do things to it. And that would have worked as a very minor material link. Unless, of course, the person you were handing this to realizes what you're up to, and then they just send it back to you. So, that can work. Very risky. Didn't work out for the last person I saw try it. Anyways, now we'll go ahead and get into today's Wizard War story. So, we'll start talking about George Romney. I'm actually related to both of these people. George Romney I am related to because we are both descendants of the Mormon apostle Parley Pratt. George Romney's family winds up down in Michigan. Not Michigan, excuse me. They start in Texas, and then they get chased down into Mexico in 1910 during the Mexican-American War, and that's where they come from. And then George Romney actually does wind up in Utah for a while, but we're not here to tell George Romney's whole story. The important part is that not only is he a Mormon, he is a Mormon that is held to priesthood. And among all the Christian religions, Mormons are one that have a lot of occult imagery and practice within their religion. So that's why it's fair to call George Romney a wizard for this particular discussion, because he has held the priesthood. He has been taught to give blessings. He has been taught protection spells. Essentially, they're prayers, but there's not much difference between a prayer and a spell. And he had his magical armor, which would be the sacred holy underwear that all Mormons wear. It's a type of garment. They don't call it magical underwear. They call it their garments. But it's a shirt and boxers, essentially, that they wear that have little symbols hidden in them, and it is designed specifically to protect them from spells. And, well, this puts George Romney in a position where one could say he is protected from someone trying to play spellcraft on him. So he qualifies. At any rate, he was the governor of Michigan from 1965 to 1969. No, 1964 to 1969, so it was a 5-year period. Anyways, if you look up George Romney, they will say he was a very popular governor, but he didn't last very long. And the reason for this, at least according to my own family lore and the things going on there, is that, well, he came to the Isabella Reservation, which is where my great-grandfather was the Manitou or medicine man, like we mentioned a little bit in a previous episode. Or I've definitely mentioned it in previous episodes, like the spirit animals episode, which we'll be talking a bit more about that as this story progresses. Anyways, so he came to the reservation, and it was to discuss the original treaty of 1856, which, well, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Anyways, this treaty agreed that the federal government and Michigan had purchased a bunch of land from the Ojibwe, or Chippewa, but they didn't want to pay out. It was already been agreed a long time ago that this land had been ceded and there should be money given for it. But here it is at this point, the 1960s, and it's a treaty from 1856. Still no money. So, he comes to the reservation, and he was quite rude, according to my grandmother, and he would not eat any of the food offered him. He was very standoffish, would not participate in any of the ceremonies, refused the pipe, and just made a complete cultural ass of himself. Now, I don't know what his spirit animal was. Maybe it was an ass. I have no idea. What I do know is that my great-grandfather very much believed that all people have a spirit animal, and that if you can divine someone's spirit animal, especially if they don't know it themselves, this puts them in a very vulnerable position. So while he was there, George Romney, my great-grandfather, Lemmy Stevens, a.k.a. Nettamup, watched and observed. And as he watched him, he slowly, from the way he moved and his mannerisms and the way he acted, divined what totem George Romney was connected to. And so, he decided from that point that he was going to have to take a more proactive steps with George Romney, because he clearly didn't have the respect that was needed. So, he made a statue of the totem, of the spirit animal, that he had divined in George Romney, because he knew that they would be meeting again very soon. This was the first of 2 meetings. And I will show a picture in this video from the second meeting. But in this second meeting, Nettamup, a.k.a. Lemmy Stevens, went to the Michigan Capitol. In his pocket, he had this totem that he had carved of George Romney's spirit animal. And he went to the Capitol, and they prepared to meet. And as you will see in the picture that I'm going to share with you, he touches George Romney's hand to shake his hand. But when he does, his other hand is touching that totem. And so, as he shakes his hand, he is making the physical contact, and that physical contact is then transferred to the totem, which he is holding in his other hand. And then he can take that back. And that is now a link. I mean, in many ways, it is mostly an astral link, because it is linked to their spirit animal, but that physical contact, as he touched him and touched the totem at the same time, gave him that piece of material link that allowed him to access even farther into someone that he is trying to affect. And especially when we are dealing with political figures, we need something more. We need that material link. Because when we try to affect political figures or people that are famous, there is a lot of thought and emotion and hopes and dreams or fears that are surrounding these people. And it creates kind of a buffer for any kind of astral link to really hit them. So you need to get that touch of material for anyone that's well known. You need that material link to really get an effect, or find some other way that cuts through all that thoughts and people's impressions and things that just provide cover and a buffer zone for anybody that's well known. Anyways, so my Grandpa Stevens took this totem home, and I don't know the full story of exactly what he did with the totem. But he was able to put pressure on George Romney, and through that, the other governors after that as well. And eventually, well, we did get our money. And we were paid very well for all the land that we took. And that was because of my Grandpa Stevens and the material link that he created through that statue. And beat the Mormon church and their magical underwear. Anyways, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you once again for... if I almost forgot again. If you would like to read this essay, there will be a link to a Google Docs copy of it in the description portion of the post, as well as a link to Amazon, where you can purchase a copy of The Sorcerer's Shadow, Volume 2, should you so choose. Okay, so don't forget to hit that like button. That does really help me out. But other than that, thank you once again for joining us. Let's see. I'm going to tell you what next week's will be real quick. Because I can't remember it off the top of my head, I'm going to check in here real quick. Creating material link. Next episode. Making a poppet. That's going to be a fun one. Make sure you turn in for that one. That's going to be a good one. Anyways, that will be it for this episode. Thank you once again for joining me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Until next time, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.